Joining us live now, the Deputy Opposition Leader Sussan Ley, sending things over to Canberra. Sussan, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. So you've announced support for Labor's tax rejig, which politically you had to do, but what's the play now? How do you criticise the Labor government for a broken promise when you're the ones who are going to support it?
Oh, there's lots to criticise, Pete, and anyone who sat through the parliament yesterday, including question time, I think would have been disgusted at the behaviour of this government doing a victory lap and leaving Australians behind. Where is the relief from the cost of living crisis that they were promised? We won't stand in the way of these tax cuts. We made that clear yesterday, but we also made clear that we will bring policy that deals with tax reform in this country, addresses bracket creep and locks in and backs the aspiration of Australians by the next election. So you wouldn't obviously expect me to tell you what that is right now, but I do want your viewers to know that while we won't stand in the way of this cost of living relief, we do know how much Australians are hurting right now. We also know that this government is letting them down incredibly badly and has done from day one.
So just a couple of points there, and I expect you'll probably remain tight-lipped on it, but in terms of rewarding aspirational Australians, are you talking about lowering the top tax bracket? Because, I mean, so many luminaries, Labor luminaries, have even said that the top tax bracket should not be more than 40%.
Pete, you wouldn't expect me to pull out one ingredient.
But is that an idea? But is that an idea that's being considered?
You wouldn't expect me to pull out one ingredient or one part of tax reform. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play the yes, this is good, no, this is bad, the rule in, rule out. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to reassure Australians that we understand that this government is not backing in their aspiration. If you want to get ahead in Australia, if you want a better future for your family, if you want your kids to do well, if you aspire to bigger and better things in your life, as so many of us do and have over the years, then this is not a government that cares about that. This is not a government that cares about your aspiration for your future. And I think people know that about this government. That's what they know about Anthony Albanese. They know he doesn't support their aspiration. They also know that he's a liar. We have a liar in the lodge. We have this bracket creep of a treasurer who failed to reveal that he was stealing $28 billion over the next 10 years by this silent killer bracket creep. So we know that we have a government that is not there for the people they promised that they would not leave behind. Because I want to make this point, Pete. Where are they now? $15 a week that you get in July this year. That's it. That's what the government was crowing about yesterday in their victory lap. Meanwhile, rents in Sydney alone have gone up $150. When I was walking the streets of southwestern Sydney last week, this is what people were talking about. How can I pay my rent? And when I reminded them that in July, if they were lucky, they would get $15 a week from this government from its changes to tax, they were disgusted.
I do love a prop, Sussan, but I just have one more question. I know you want to address bracket creep, but to do that, you're going to have to change the tax brackets, yeah?
We'll bring a policy in keeping with the intentions behind stage 3 tax reform, which, yes, Pete, we're about addressing bracket creep and we're about locking in support for aspiration for all Australians. But that will take work. That will take sensible,
has the plan even started
detailed
yet?
work, which we will do.
I know this was announced yesterday, but has the plan even started yet? Or are you just going to start from now to work it out?
We're always doing work. We're doing a lot of policy work on a range of fronts in the background, and we'll reveal them when we're due and ready. And there's so many policy areas, Pete, because this is just one. Can I tell you? Look at energy. Look at industrial relations. Look at my own portfolio of industry.
Leads me to my next point. So if Tony Burke has his way on IR, Sussan, workers could be able to ignore calls and emails from bosses or colleagues after hours. I certainly wouldn't get very far in my job if that were the case, but what's your response to that?
Well, it's one component that he's trying to present to the Australian people and get sympathy without properly explaining the full range of his policies. Now, I believe that between employers and workers, you work these things out. You talk about them. You don't need every single thing locked in regulation that then can go straight to the Fair Work Commission and blow up into some sort of industrial dispute. You just don't do that. The broad push of Tony Burke's industrial relations changes is bad for workers and it's bad for employers, and it's absolutely shocking for the economy. And you only had to talk to independent contractors, as I was last night in the building industry, and hear how they, again, aspiring tradies, they get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, they get in their utes, they go to building sites, they work incredibly hard, and they don't understand why this government is going to reach out into their workplace and demand certain things and certain arrangements that have suited them and the people they work with for years and are actually paying well.
Just a final one here, Sussan, because you come from the beautiful regions. The Nats want to put an end to the renewable rollout. David Littleproud says farmland is at saturation point. Do you agree with him on that new renewable energy projects must be stopped now and that Australia should downgrade its commitment to Paris?
Some areas of Australia are screaming in pain from this push to renewables, and some of those people were outside the parliament yesterday, and some of them are in my electorate, and they're watching these massive transmission lines being built across prime farmland, and it's disgraceful.
Should they end?
What about the Hunter offshore winds? We need to balance the transition to renewables in a way that benefits rural Australia, that doesn't put undue pressure on electricity and energy prices for Australians, because Chris Bowen's 82% renewable energy dream is in fact just a dream. His 89% target for electric vehicles is just a dream. And meanwhile, we do have people who are doing it really, really tough when it comes to the cost of electricity. So we have to get that right, Pete. It does have to be a balance. But I do have sympathy for people who are absolutely appalled by what is happening when it comes to the push for offshore wind farms or these renewable energy transmission towers, these high voltage towers that are sort of such old technology and huge and defacing of the landscape. And the other thing I just want to say, Pete, is that where is the talk about protecting the environment in all this? As a previous Environment Minister, I know that by clearing land to put up renewable infrastructure, you also have a huge effect on the environment. But it appears this government is quite happy to ignore that.
Sussan, we'll leave it there. Thanks for your time.